best comic I have read so far.
Are you sure about that?
It's about that time. As usual, we'll start Dark Victory off with its art, and Tim Sale, RIP, you are the absolute GOAT. The best comic book art in my experience tells a completely non-verbal story, and every fucking panel in this 400-page magnum opus has so much depth. In Long Halloween, we had a lot of color and shape motifs, but here, Sale really uses shadows, and it really does give Dark Victory its own visual identity while still feeling like a part of the same family. He also does a lot more of what I'm gonna call elemental panels. Think like steam, heat, and especially fog. These are just a treat to look at. It's just so effortless to read. You burn through hundreds of pages before even looking up. And thankfully his minimalist style is also here and just as great as it was last time. He doesn't do as much crazy panel design though, but the times where he does do half or even full page folds really do hit. What's even better is how in sync the art and writing are, and one of the things I learned is that Sale drew every single page in order, which really helped that synchronicity. And I'll touch on this more later, but the character designs, man, chef's kiss, he just nails them. I think while I'll give Jeff Leeb his flowers, Tim Sale kinda carries Loki. He really is in my very early pantheon of the great comic book artists, and I would say Dark Victory, in my opinion, has definitively better art than Long Halloween. Man. Now that we've glazed the art enough, let's talk about where Dark Victory picks up. Gotham is in a civil war after the Roman's death, and it is broadly the mob desperately trying to stay in power, the supervillains absolutely wreaking havoc, and the poor police trying desperately to fix anything. And you can feel how overwhelmed Batman is, having to constantly jump around when everyone breaks out of Arkham Asylum. Also, something I had to cut from the last video for time, but I want to mention here, I don't know what the psychology is, but I always find myself reading non-linear panels in the right order, and I just think that's really cool. But the actual story begins very cool, very calm. It's slicker, more methodical, and you can tell they don't have to prove anything. You know what this is. There's just a fog of sadness stemming from Harvey's absence. Gordon and Batman are mourning, and Bruce is straight up depressed. His story is really about grief and coping, and it adds a lot of emotional weight to his character. And while Bruce is in the depression stage of grief, Gordon is in the anger one, and you really see the walls close in on him now that Harvey's gone and Batman is so reclusive. And that sadness isn't limited to the heroes. The remaining members of the Falcone family are in complete disarray after the death of the Roman. You have Sophia desperately trying to restore the family's pedigree, Mario who wants the Falcone name to finally be free from crime, and Alberta who, after being Holiday, is in this deep psychosis. But now, suddenly a new killer nicknamed Hangman is killing cops and other law officials each month, and always with a noose and a game of Hangman, but also always on the previous DA Harvey Dent's files. And Harvey, after escaping Arkham, is nowhere to be found for the first part of the story, but rest assured his absence is felt. So while we wait for Two-Face to show up, I want to talk about the heroes, and then we'll go back to the story, and then finally talk about the villains. I like my Bruce Wayne hairy! Batman, for the most part, is definitely the same force of nature he was in Long Halloween. I really like how Dark Victory does the detective angle. He's not some genius who uses nanotech to get the answer. He genuinely has to unravel this mystery, and he comes off a lot smarter as a result. It's interesting to me that this is viewed as happening early in his career as Batman because he seems super mature. But the biggest change is one that I alluded to before. Bruce is dealing with the guilt of Harvey's downfall, and his only way of coping is to distance himself from Gordon, Selina, and everyone he cares about. He needs to be a lone wolf. In fact, I'd honestly describe the main villain of the story to be like loneliness, but who I really want to focus on in this part is the new district attorney replacing Harvey, Janice Porter. This team, man, is so good at creating original characters rather than just recycling the usual suspects. She's a stickler and a constant disruptor, kind of like an Umbridge from Harry Potter. But my favorite part of her is actually what she does to Gordon. Whereas in Long Halloween, Gordon was kind of the conservative compared to Batman and Harvey, but Porter completely changes this dynamic. Coupled with Batman distancing himself from the police, Gordon gets to be really vulnerable here. And Gordon's guilt over being an absent father is also done by far the best here, and although it does still make me really sad, it does add a great layer to the story. I'm cheating a little bit with this last one because she's not a hero, but Sofia Falcone also gets some brutally intense scenes as she's seeking revenge for being paralyzed from the waist down, and she just feels like this is her last eruption of a dying volcano. Gushing aside, let's talk about what I didn't like in the story. While I have absolutely nothing bad to say about Tim Sale, Jeff Lieb, my man, could you change the story just a little bit more? The search to find Hangman is good, it's well executed, okay? But it kind of feels like the same go-around. Coupled with how much of this is exploring the impacts of the last story, the first half of Dark Victory feels more like Long Halloween DLC rather than a full-fledged sequel. Take Holiday, Control F, and replace 22 caliber pistol with a noose, and US Holidays with also Holidays, and it doesn't really hit the same the second time around. And there are a ton of characters, and while I don't think it hit me as hard as Long Halloween, we gotta continue the tradition because this story has Batman, Gordon, Robin, we'll talk about him later, Hangman, Two-Face, Joker, Calendarman, Porter, Sophia Marco and Alberto, Alfred, Catwoman, Poison Ivy, Solomon Grundy, Monsieur Freeze, Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, Riddler, and a ton of other side characters, and it just works. But while Long Halloween's strength was that everyone was looking for Holiday, here it's kind of fractured where they're looking to find Falcone's body, they're looking for Hangman, they're looking for Two-Face, and it doesn't really beef Hangman up in the same way. In terms of plot holes, they're so minor I hesitate to even mention them, how did Wilcox have time to play a whole ass game of Hangman here, and come on, how did you not know justice is blind? I don't know, maybe I'm just the LeBron James of Hangman or something. You seriously couldn't get a jury of your peers? As a cop, they do kind of a soft retcon of this though in saying they don't actually play the game of Hangman, but knowing the reveal later on, it doesn't make a ton of sense. They kick Catwoman out of the story for most of it, which made me bummed because I really liked her last time, but I acknowledge that was necessary. But what they do later is shadow drop that the Roman could be Selina's father. My last notable complaint though comes from what they did to the new DA, Porter. Having Porter A get kissed by Gordon and B be Harvey's lackey kind of misses the potential for her. I would have really liked her to be a legitimate foil to show Harvey's absence as DA, more so than being basically a glorified henchwoman. I think there is a story out there where she's as goated as Gilda. Speaking of Gilda, she's not in this story, but her absence is very felt, and I really hope there's more to her character than this. They tease her a good amount too, and she's really key to the last vestiges of Harvey in Two-Face. And when a certain event happens to Porter later, we know it's only because he simps for Gilda. So since we mentioned old Harv, let's talk about when we finally get our first taste of Two-Face. He's trying to figure out who the Hangman is as much as Batman, since they're framing him with his old files, and 10 extra sauce points for having the other villains as the jury when he puts Calendarman on trial. Then he purposefully gets himself arrested and generally comes across as intelligent and formidable. And his trial before the other villains bust him out has such rich writing, it's a true pleasure to read. Every page in this just has the perfect amount of dialogue, and it just ebbs and flows in such great harmony. And all the villains are great as mentioned, but the Joker needs a special shout out. In these small doses, he packs so much punch in every scene he's in. And I wouldn't call him a villain, but Mario the Falcone, who's trying to rebuild his family name, gets really gut-punching moments as well. You already know the mob is just goated here. But enough of that, because it's time to talk about my favorite part of Batman Dark Victory, Robin. When I saw Robin on the cover, I was straight up nervous. I am not a Robin fan. I think his outfits are lame, he's never been done good in the movies, and I've always preferred a dickless Batman. But to be fair, I don't even know his origin story. So I've already talked about how Batman is battling loneliness and grief as much as Hangman and Two-Face. Enter Robin, whose parents tragically die in a circus accident that wasn't really an accident at all. Bruce, being in attendance, takes note and young Robin in, accompanied by some fantastic art. Robin is not just a sidekick here, he's a true second protagonist. And they do this by drawing the obvious parallel between Robin and Bruce when he lost his parents, and this is shown purely in these pages' art, and this is just so fantastic. I flipped back and forth between these like 20 times. And when Alfred tells Robin he's not alone like he did with Bruce all those years ago, it just got me more emotional than any other comic by a fucking mile, and it's just I'm fucking crying in the club at this point. And when Bruce finally shows his identity, it's symbolic of accepting Harvey's gone, internalizing the guilt of dumping Selena, and distancing himself from Gordon. It is a beautiful, masterful character arc that is the highlight for me. Bruce, for the most part, was pretty static in Long Halloween, so I'm really glad he gets his moment to shine. And it really feels like he earned this moment. So now we have one last loose end. Hangman. I gotta come clean. I had absolutely no idea who Hangman was. I thought it could be Harvey. I thought it could be Alberto again. I even thought it could be Porter. But it turns out Hangman is... Sophia Falcone? Turns out she was faking being paralyzed the whole time, and wow, I have no words. And it really is a revenge story for her, and they hint it so well, in fact way better than they did for Long Halloween. Like Catwoman saying she couldn't track down her orthopedic surgeon, or when Batman finds the Hangman's lair abandoned and sees the bald masks that Sophia's been using. And funny how both the killers were Falcones. This last chapter has so many wow moments, like when Harvey kills Sophia, or when the villains stumble upon the Batcave. You're just never more than 20 pages away from something just knocking your socks off. Joker shoots Two-Face, and oh yeah, Falcone might be alive. This comic rules. Before I go further, next week I'm going to be reading my very first Hulk comic since I need more of that Leap Sale pairing, so come aboard and subscribe if you don't want to miss that. My plans after that are pretty up in the air, so if there's another comic you want me to read with fresh Gen Z eyes, please let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for recs. Up until writing the script for this video, I was fully ready to give it a 9, since I do think it has more flaws than Long Halloween, but reflecting more on it, I just think Bruce's arc, coupled with the best comic art I've ever seen to date, just makes this another 10 out of 10 experience. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. Peace.